Hi folks, welcome to another episode of my journal series. This episode we will be building the gold farm that I alluded to last episode. It is the donut version, the poor man's gold farm or whatever it's called, and I will be talking more about my trip to America. So, hope you enjoy. So yeah, this is more stories from America. I don't know how long this episode will last, but, sit back and enjoy. And the reason I've decided to do it as a journal episode is because I've already made one video about America. I didn't want to make another one, so I thought incorporate it with a journal episode. I guess to catch people up who aren't aware, I was in America in February. I travelled over at the start of the month, met up with Zenger in Texas, and then we travelled over to California, stopping at many places, many interesting sites along the way. Went to California, stayed there for a couple of weeks, met up with the Cape Gore guys, did a marathon, a charity marathon that you can see at Cape Gore Charity Marathon VODs on YouTube, link in the description if I remember. And then we went home and that was it. GG, end of, thank you for coming, see you later. Oh yeah, part of the reason I'm post-comming this is because ghasts kept showing up and it was really annoying. Yes, I'm building the farm in the wrong way, but I built it in the right way afterwards. I think it was the 4th of February was when I flew over to America. One of the things I forgot to mention when I was flying over to America was when I arrived at Edinburgh Airport, which is where I flew out from, I had to wait, I think, like 6 hours there, or 7 hours, which was terrible because, when you're traveling's, like, it's not something necessarily that stresses me. Once I get into it, I'm fine. But thinking about it and planning and all that, that's when all the thoughts are going through your head, you're trying to make sure you do everything right. And the absolute worst thing was, I arrived at Edinburgh Airport at, like, midnight, I think it was, and there was nothing, no one there. There was nobody there. There was nothing open. The way up to security was blocked off, and I just had to sit in the lobby for 6 or 7 hours straight, and it was not the greatest thing, shall we say, I don't think it was 6 or 7 hours, although it felt like 6 or 7 hours. I think it was more like 4 or 5 hours maybe. Anyway, whatever. I had to wait a long time there, so that was the first part of my journey. I didn't really specify that. The first leg of the journey was to Amsterdam, and another thing I forgot to mention was the worst landing when I say the worst landing, the most hectic landing I've ever had in an aircraft was that landing in Amsterdam. It was very windy, which, to be fair, it was windy on the way back from Amsterdam as well. I think the reason is because, obviously, the Netherlands is a low-lying country. It's on the coast. The airport's fairly near the coast as well. And the plane was, rocking about all over the place. It was... It wasn't... Well, it was a wee bit scary, I'm not going to lie. Seeing the wing, like, flying all over the place as we got nearer the ground. But at the end of the day, you see all these videos on YouTube of, like, these planes landing in, like, severe winds. So you have a lot of confidence in the pilots. So that was, I've flown over 20 times now. That was definitely the scariest of the landings I've ever had. And from there, it was basically just a simple task of going over to Atlanta and then over to Texas. One thing I have spoken about a lot. So I've spoken about this to just about everyone on YouTube and IRL, but I'm going to put it here just for the record. This was start of February. You may think, that's before the coronavirus. It was during, because at that time, America hadn't shut the borders, obviously, because I got in. But if you'd been to China, you weren't allowed in. And when I was in Amsterdam, Amsterdam Airport, whatever it's called, it's a massive airport. It took me a long time to get from my arrival place to my gate for Atlanta. When I got there, I entered this lounge and there was a load of people of Oriental origin with face masks on, and at that point it really hits home just how serious it was. There was loads of people with masks on, and at that point you're just thinking, wow, this is real. At that point, did I expect it to turn out the way it did? Not really. I don't think I could have predicted that, in a month, in 2 months' time we'll be in lockdown. I don't think I could have done that, but at that point it really did hit home how, serious the situation was. And then shortly after that, I spoke to the guy at the gate and he was like, right, have you been to China? I was like, nope. So I got a green stamp on my passport and I was off on my way to Atlanta. So that was in Amsterdam on the way there. So this was like a whole 2 months before lockdown. So yeah, interesting. It's interesting how it took so long for it to spread further than that, which is something I don't really get, but there you go. So yeah, that was Amsterdam. So I arrived. I can't remember what day I arrived on, but I arrived one day. Zenger came and picked me up at the airport, and that was good and all. But I was walking in Zenger's kind of area, and interestingly enough, there wasn't like the pavements, or I guess the sidewalks as they'd be called over there. They were in some places non-existent. Like often they'd run into people's gardens, or they'd go through people's gardens, or they'd go to someone's garden and then they would just stop, and you'd have to go around. It was very, very, very awkward. But I remember clearly I was walking back to like Zenger's place, and like I was walking down the street. There was no pavements, but there was a massive like traffic jam, massive tailback, and like in order to avoid I was walking on the road because there was no pavements. I couldn't walk on the grass because that was like other people's land. So I was walking on the road in a traffic. I was part of the traffic jam. There was a car behind me and a car in front of me, which was very, very confusing. And then we got to a crossroads, a junction. And that's where it got very confusing, because I was like, right, what did I do here? Like, I can't avoid the cars by walking on someone's land, because it's someone's land, and, you know, everyone probably has a dog that they're ready to loose on me, or whatever, or a gun, or whatever. Everyone probably close carries. So that was a pretty confusing part, the lack of pavements or sidewalks. But I figured it out in the end. You know, I spent a couple of days in Zenger's kind of area. I quite enjoyed it. It was nice to, you know, get that first view of America. And then I think it was the Friday we headed off, so that was like a few days after I arrived. We headed off on our journey to California, and it was on that journey that we went to places such as the Grand Canyon, such as we went to the Four Corners Monument. We went to Vegas, went to various places, and we stopped at a lot of motels on the way. First motel we stopped at was in New Mexico. I can't remember the name of that place, but the one after that was when we went to Cortez, Colorado. And I've spoken a lot about why, or about how much I enjoyed Colorado, even though we were there for barely any time at all. I mean, I'm sure it seems strange. It probably seems a wee bit strange to Zendra that I enjoyed such a short, you know, stop off. But you know, I did. I enjoyed the scenery. The scenery was definitely the best part, but the people that I met there were really nice. I liked the accent, and yeah, overall, it gave me a chill vibe. You know, and it was quite a remote place, to be fair. So maybe that helped out. Maybe if it'd been more of a city, it would have not been as quaint. But I guess the worst part about Cortez, Colorado, was I think it was the motel. We were in the motel. We were in our motel room. It was decent enough. I mean, it wasn't the worst motel room ever, but the worst part about it was the heating was up full, and it couldn't be stopped. So I think at this point Zendra had fallen asleep. Generally what happened was, I think Zendra was first to fall asleep normally at the two of us, and I think he'd also be the first to, or no, he'd be the last to wake up. So basically he always slept longer than me. Not every single night, but most nights that seemed to be the case. And not that that's a bad thing, because, you know, he needed the rest for driving and whatnot. But I think he was already asleep at this point. Yeah, I was stewing in the room. Like, I could not take the heat. Like, the temperature outside, generally, in the first part of our journey wasn't that high. I couldn't tell you what the temperature was, but it wasn't like uncomfortable. It wasn't like really hot like it was in California. But inside this motel room, it was boiling. And I went to the desk and asked the girl, "Oh, listen, is there anything I could do to sort this?" And she was like, "Nope." And that was it. That was the response. So I just had to, like, I'm pretty sure I had the door open for about 5 or 10 minutes. Well, actually, no, I stood outside. I was too scared to have the door open in case, like, you never know, somebody came in and mugged us or whatever. But anyway, that was the worst part of Cortez, Colorado. Was the excruciating heat, because it was excruciating. It got excruciating at one point. So I stood outside with the door open or whatever else, which was nice. It was nice to get a breath of fresh air in that. Incidentally, on motels, I've had a look around Scotland, like around the websites in Scotland. There don't seem to be motels in the same ways there are in America. Like, there's guest houses, but there's no motels. So it's clearly maybe an American thing, if I was to guess. I don't know. Anyway, that's just something I thought I would bring up. The next night we drove over to Flagstaff, Arizona. and that was up in the mountains. That was very nice, actually. I think if I could go back anywhere, it would be, well, apart from Colorado, Cortez, Colorado, I think Flagstaff was pretty good. It would be very nice to stay there for a bit longer. I'm not sure what there is there, apart from the Grand Canyon, obviously, a couple hours to the north. But, the mountains were nice. It seemed like a reasonably nice area. The climate was definitely a lot different. There was different trees. There was snow on the ground still. I mentioned this for a couple of reasons. So, at one point I went out a walk to Walmart, and jaywalking is a lot's made of it. Well, not a lot's made of it, but you always get the impression that it's taken more seriously in America than most other places. I mean, I'm not a habitual jaywalker, unless you count like in the UK where you can cross the road wherever. But in America, I always made it. I made the effort to cross at the pedestrian crossing, or the crosswalk, or whatever you want to call it. But in Flagstaff, I had a real dilemma because some of the lights were broken. Some of the street lights, the pedestrian lights were broken. And that was really, really frustrating, having to wait there and have them not change for so long. And in the end, you just had to make a dash for it. So that was a particularly frustrating part. Another particularly frustrating part of Flagstaff was I got lost in the Walmart. It was really dumb. Like, I legit... Well, when I say I got lost, I sort of got lost, but like, I couldn't find anything. And then all of a sudden I'd end up back at the front door and I didn't intend to be there. It was really a tad nightmarish. And I think it took me an hour. I feel like it took me an hour to get there. It wasn't that far though, maybe 45 minutes. Let's say 45 minutes, okay? Conservative estimate. It took me 45 minutes to get from our motel to Walmart. And then it took me 45 minutes to get back, obviously. But then it took me probably more than 45 minutes inside the Walmart to find what I needed, which was mighty frustrating. And I can actually remember what I bought that night. It was batteries. Now, what actually happened was I bought batteries at a previous Walmart. It was either the local one to Zenger, or in one of the first kind of cities. Maybe it was in the Cortez Walmart, whatever. But you get the picture. I'd already bought batteries, but then I'd lost them. I couldn't find them. I thought I'd left them in a motel or something, or in... I don't know. Point is, I didn't have batteries anymore, and I needed them for my camera, so I had to buy more batteries in Flagstaff Walmart. And then the other batteries turned up anyway, so by the end of the trip, I had more batteries than I knew what to do with, and so I just had to, pile them all in my bag and get them home. I've still got them, actually, which... that was a particularly embarrassing part, having to buy more batteries than need be. I mean, they weren't expensive, but it's just an expense I could have done without. I don't even know what happened to them. I think they were like at the bottom of my bag or something, or I'd left them in Zenger's car in like a pocket or something, and I didn't realise. Because that's the thing, I pretty much trashed Zenger's car in the sense I left stuff all over the place. I mean, I don't think he minded, but at the same time, I was looking about, every time we got to a new motel, I always had so much stuff to bring in and that. Anyway, so yeah, that was Flagstaff. Then we went to the Grand Canyon. That was the day after. So, day after that, went up to the Grand Canyon, which was epic. Definitely one of the highlights. Unfortunately, so I went to a gift shop because I felt like the Grand Canyon's the one place you want to buy gifts. Souvenirs, that sort of. I never bought any souvenirs. But I bought gifts for other people, and I bought what I thought was a picture. Turned out to be a card, so that was a bit embarrassing. So I've given someone a card instead of a picture, which is definitely a bit underwhelming. In my defence, I looked at the price of a lot of the souvenirs, and it was there was quite a lot. There was a lot on offer, but you had to pay quite a lot for a lot of souvenirs, and pictures probably were on the higher end of the spectrum. So, I saw the card, thought it was a picture, and it was cheap. So, what are you going to do? Of course I'm going to buy it. But that's a bit of a regret of mine, buying a card instead of a picture. And the funny thing is, I always complained about the prices. Zenger probably got annoyed at that. The fact I kept going on about, oh, that's so extortionate. I think my problem was, one, obviously I don't like spending money. Two, when I look at, say, something for $20, I think $20, and then I translate that into pounds, but instead of properly translating it, I think £20. Now, $20 in pounds is like $20 is £15. So obviously, the higher it goes, the bigger the disparity between dollars and pounds is, and that's probably what affected me, was the fact that I couldn't properly translate it all the time, or at first glance I couldn't properly translate it. But yeah, whatever. There's one of the issues I failed to overcome in America. Might have spoken about that in the last video, I don't remember. Right, then, Grand Canyon, we went to the Hoover Dam, and, went to Vegas via the Hoover Dam. Vegas is the one that I have a few stories from, that I haven't mentioned, I don't think, in the last video, or anywhere else. The first one is the Ghetto Motel. Now, I think Xander mentioned this. I'll just mention it quickly. So what we would do, we'd arrive in Flagstaff, settle in for the night, do whatever we needed to do, get lunch, or dinner, sorry, and then we'd think, right, what are we doing tomorrow? What's the plan? We'd kind of plan out, like, we'd have a rough plan of what we were going to do for the journey, but once we got to an area, the plan for the next day became more thorough. You know, we'd think about it a bit more, and I was usually the one that would, you know, look on Google and see what accommodation was available, and we had a look in Vegas. Well, usually what it would consist of is typing in motels in this area, so Vegas, and we'd look for the cheapest one. So we did that, looked in Vegas, and there was this one for like $12 or something. It was really, really, really cheap. Like, normally the cheapest would be about $30, and they'd still end up ripping us off, but we found one for like $12, insanely cheap. So we thought, brilliant. So Xander drove us there, we arrived, and it was the most ghetto part of town ever. Like, now this is the thing, I'm not very switched on. I'm not very switched on, if you know what I mean. So there's a lot of things that people will notice that I won't. So for example, Xander, he noticed that there was a car with no registration plate, which, yeah, okay, that is a bit sketchy. Went to the motel. It was a yellow building, I remember. It was in, as I said, very ghetto part of town. I got out of the car, went round to the front of the building, took one look at it and thought, nah fam, and then headed back to the car and was like, let's go somewhere else. Second cheapest motel, let's head there. We just decided to ditch it there, which I don't really regret for two reasons. One, because it meant we didn't have to stay in that part of town. Not trying to be discriminative, but you don't know what might have gone on there. We went to the second cheapest one, and it was closer to the centre, which I think was better, because it meant that, well, one thing, I could walk there when I did, and yeah, just being close to that part of town, it was more like Vegas than just a random suburb. Interestingly enough, the motel we stayed in Vegas, it was the only motel, I think, Xander can correct me on this, but I think it was the only one we had to pay a deposit. Now, normally there would just be a straight up fee for the room, and that's fine and all, but this required us to pay a deposit. So I think Xander was the one that paid the deposit. I paid the price of the room. You got the deposit back, because Xander and I aren't the sort of people that are going to trash a room. But that was interesting. It was interesting that it was only in Vegas that was a thing. So I wonder if they've had previous. Interestingly enough, though, we arrived in the room and one of the lights was broken, and it was a case of, yeah, we better get the scene to, just in case they, look at the room after we've gone and, oh, there's a light, it's not working. Because that's what some people say, even failing to report an incident is just as bad as committing it. So we got the light seen to, and I think it was just one of the people came along and got it sorted. The only full day we had in Vegas, we spent a lot of time just sitting in the room, on the computer or doing whatever, right? And I think somebody did come to clean, and we were, I think we were just like, oh, we're fine. But then in the night we got another knock at the door, so I went to open it, and then something in the back of my head was like, wait a minute, and then at that exact moment Zedge was like, wait, and then we said, hello, who's there? And the guy was like, hey man, do you have any weed? Or something like that. And it's just like, okay, that's happened. Obviously we didn't open the door for obvious reasons. I think Xander then got his car keys out, and because in America they've got the thing where you double lock it and then you can press the lock again to activate the horn. So he did that, and hopefully that gave them I don't know if it gave them a fright, but I'm sure they got a wee bit of a flag when it went off. So that was pretty funny. During my night excursion in the town, in the Vegas Strip, there's a few things I wanted to mention about that, if I can find them on my notes. It was an amazing experience walking around Vegas, but not that much happened in terms of beyond being invited to a club of stuff I won't mention. beyond that, nothing really crazy happened. I felt safer, honestly, when I was on the Vegas Strip than getting there, because on the way there was less people, and so, you know, if someone came and tried to pick me off, there'd be no one there to witness it, and, you know, that's it, done. But on the Vegas Strip, it was packed with people. I reckon if I'd gone at, say, 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, it would have been more crazy, but because obviously people have been there and they've had their stuff to drink and all that. But I was there at like 7 or 8 o'clock maybe. I'm pretty sure I got back about 9:30, 10 o'clock, or maybe earlier. So I wasn't there at the dead of night really, but it was still interesting. I mentioned in my last video I walked down to the Mandalay Bay Hotel. That became the plan. I didn't know where the Mandalay Bay Hotel was, and I just happened to see it in the distance, and I thought, oh brilliant, I'll just walk there and that's where I'll turn around. When I was there was this, so in Vegas there's not a lot of pedestrian crossings, and instead there's like bridges that go over the road, just because that's better, I'm guessing, with the volume of people they have. I mean, there are pedestrian crossings, but there's a lot of these bridges that go over the road, and that's good. It keeps the flow of people going, and it's fine. Behind the staircase of one, underneath, under the arch, near the Mandalay Bay Hotel, I saw someone lying on the ground. I mean, it shouldn't have surprised me because it's Vegas, and you know, I'd seen everything from like Batman to a club of things unmentionable, but it was still just a case of you just looked and you thought you don't know the person's story. I mean, maybe I'm overthinking about it. Maybe it was just a drunk guy that passed out, but still, you know, I walked past a guy lying on the ground, and it's just like, oh dear. And you know, it still comes to mind to this day, like what happened to that person? Did they just wake up in the morning and were none the wiser, or you know, was it more serious? But for some reason, that surprised me more than it should have. It wasn't a scary experience, but probably I wouldn't even call it a close encounter, to be honest. But and I've mentioned this before. But on my way back from the Vegas Strip, I was about, I don't know, a kilometre or something from the motel. And in Vegas it's dual carriageway, obviously, so there's two or three lanes of traffic, and then, you know, something in the middle with palm trees and whatnot, and then, you know, 2 or 3 lanes of traffic on the other side. And I was near the motel, and I saw out of the palm trees on the other side of the road this figure like walk across the road, and then he walked across the road, made a beeline. He walked with purpose, which is what got me. He wasn't like staggering, he walked with purpose, and arrived at my side of the road, like, you know, about 50 or so meters in front of me. And I didn't want to react or anything, so I just walked towards him, walked past him. As I walked past him, because he said something, as I walked past him, he said something, I just kind of looked at him. I looked in his face, and I saw in his eyes he was completely wasted. I thought, oh, brilliant, phew, he's, you know, if this guy tries to pull anything funny, then I can A, probably run away, and B, if I have to, maybe defend myself, although self-defense is literally the last option on my to-do list. So I just kept walking, and then he just turned and started following me up the road, shouting stuff. I don't know what he was saying. I didn't obviously stop to listen or appreciate what he was saying, but he followed me all the way back to the motel. Oh, I probably left him. He was probably quite far behind when I got to the motel. So yeah, one of the more interesting characters in Vegas. But that's what I mean. That's the point where it's a little more tense, just because you're out of the area where there's loads of people, and so if something happens, there's less people there to witness it. Right, so that was Vegas. What I took, baggage, right. So this falls into the category of things I was never going to reveal. I mean, Zenja probably knows because, you know, I travelled with him the whole way. What did I take with me to America? So basically, 2 issues. One, I really don't like hold luggage because there's extra check-in and everything like that, and I once, when I travelled to Africa, I travelled in a group, and one of the people that went, they lost their bag, and they didn't get it back when they were there, and they didn't get it back for like another year or something. So that's one of the I'm not saying that's a valid reason for not taking hold luggage, but it still came into my thinking, you know, what if? And obviously I wouldn't take anything that was important to me. I wouldn't take any of that stuff with me because it's obviously risky, might get lost, broken, etc, etc. And the other thing was extra costs. Like, the tickets I got were cheap, or not cheap, but they were a fairly good price to get over to America. It would start hiking if you wanted to take hold luggage, and at that point I thought, I probably can't do this, so I had to take just hand luggage, and that very much limited what I could take. Now, it was one piece of hand luggage that was not very small, but it had to be a specific type of hand luggage and an accessory. Now, I think I could have gotten away with taking something a bit bigger than what I did, because they weren't really checking, but I'm pretty sure if I turned up with like a big case and then a small case, they'd have looked at my ticket and gone, "Eye on your bike." Would have been too risky to do something like that, but I could probably have taken something a wee bit bigger and got away with it. The accessory I took was obviously a laptop sleeve with my laptop in it, or the laptop I borrowed that I still have. I guess the main thing I took was just clothing, basically. Clothing, a mouse. I didn't even take a headset because I ended up borrowing Zenger's headset, which was very, very much appreciated. I took a toothbrush, toothpaste, shaver. There wasn't much else. Like the amount of clothing I took was definitely not enough. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I took way less clothing than I should have taken. I think it was justified purely to, not have to pay the extra money for hold luggage. And thankfully we got a chance to wash clothes when we were in California, staying at Zenger's grandfather's house. That helped, and I did a couple of washes there, and that was fine. I'm trying to remember, did I take anything else? I don't remember. Obviously passport and like documents and stuff, insurance and whatnot, but yeah, that's normal. And that's the thing, on the way home I had to leave a bunch of stuff behind because I had like way more stuff than I could fit into my bag, so I ended up just I just left stuff with Zenger. I threw stuff away. Well, that's usually what I do when I travel. If I've got too much stuff, I'll just leave behind what I can afford to leave behind. So yeah, because I had things like souvenirs and whatnot. As I said, I didn't buy too many souvenirs. So that was kind of what I took with me. Basically nothing. I've seen people pack more for like a day away than I did for a month in America. So yeah, just remember that. I don't really have many stories from my time in Southern California with Zenger's grandfather. So we'll move on to, and also Mexico, Zenger and I both kind of covered in our videos, so I'll skip over that. Disneyland again, probably skip over that. We'll skip right to our arrival in the Cape Coral district of California. Zenger and I stayed at a ghetto motel in the area that the other Cape Coral guys live. It was very expensive, but the story I want to tell you about this was it was the floor story, the sleeping on this floor story. So if I give you the full story, my side of it's not going to make it seem any less daft, but at least you'll see my thought process. So the story is, Danny and Spods had a terrible room, so I let them sleep in my bed while I slept on the floor, right? Sounds daft, yes, it was daft, but at the time it made sense. So basically, I was like, they'd both just got off of flights. They probably had slept in the flights, but I just thought, well, you need rest, so you can have my bed. Zenger I thought was asleep, turned out he wasn't, but either way, at the time I didn't want to disturb him or anything, and plus we only had like single beds, so I thought, right, I'll leave things as they are. The only option is sleep on the floor. So that's what I did. Now, I did this on the basis that I've slept in worse places. Like, I guarantee you that trying to sleep on the floor was not the worst place I've slept. I know it's going to take a lot of convincing. I've slept in a tool shed before. That wasn't nice. I've slept in intensive care before, which is equally not as nice. Like, as comfy as they try to make it, it really isn't. I've slept in a hospital with like tubes coming out of me and all that. Again, they try to make it as comfortable as possible, but emphasis on as comfortable as possible, not comfort. I've slept in like the Scottish Highlands with like tree roots in my back and all that. So trust me, the floor was not the worst place. It was one of the worst places I'd slept, but it wasn't the worst. So I wanted to give it a go anyway. And the other thing was I'd already slept for like 4 hours, like when we arrived. Like, we were both like gubbed, so because we'd had to get up early that morning to go to Disneyland, so I'd already slept for 4 hours. So I thought, brilliant, 4 hours sleep. If I can pick up a couple of hours on the floor of broken sleep, that would be fine. It didn't happen. I tried. It didn't work. I did the worst thing. I should have read. But the thing is, as I said, I didn't bring much with me. I didn't bring any books. So what was I going to read? So I was like, I'll just watch YouTube. That's the worst thing. You don't watch YouTube to get to sleep. I watched YouTube, and then I was like, it got to like 5 in the morning or something. I was just like, yeah, I'm not falling asleep anytime soon. So I launched Football Manager and played some of that. And before I knew it, it's like 8 or 9 o'clock, and Pat and Nats arrived, and we're out for the day. Yeah, that was my floor story. Yeah, it was pretty daft, but as I said, there was at least a thought process behind it, and it wasn't just a rash. Like, it was kind of rash. I feel like I was pretty grumpy that day. I don't actually remember much of that day. We went to Pat's college, and we kind of had a tour around it, and we met up with Alton, and I have very, very few memories about that day. I know we played in the college library, because it's on the vlog, we played, Mario Kart on the Switch. I have a vague memory of, like, people studying in that. I kid you not, I don't remember much about that morning, or that day in general, so obviously it's entirely my fault, but that's the price I pay for 4 hours sleep. And incidentally, I think Zenja and I, after we had lunch with the guys, Zenja and I went back to the motel because he had I think he had assignments or something to do, and I pretty much slept until dinner time. So I recuperated my sleep at that point. Oh yeah, so when I was in the kind of ghetto area of this motel, there's a couple of instances where I met some of the locals. I was walking back from Walmart, and I walked past this wall, and there was this guy sitting on it with something in his mouth. I don't want to think about what was in his mouth. And literally all he said was, "Hey man, come over here." Like, I've had a sheltered life, when that's the most, the most ghetto thing somebody's ever said to me is like, just get over here. And so it's just a case, of, no thank you, no thanks. The other thing was, I went out the motel room. I can't remember what I was doing. Maybe I was going to Walmart. Yeah, because that's all I ever did, was go to Walmart. If ever, I was either playing Football Manager or going to or UHC or going to Walmart, and there was a woman there, and she had her child, and her child sneezed on me. But she said, she actually commented on what I was wearing. I'm just like, what? Whoa! Some random woman all of a sudden just comments on what I'm wearing. I can't remember what she said. I don't even know if it was a compliment or a diss. And then, she asked me if I played basketball. I'm like, no. And then she made a reference to Kobe, and that's all I remember. So the next thing on my list is night before the marathon. So what did I get up to? Nothing special. It was just more to muse at the fact that we arrived. There was a lot of waiting about. I remember what I did. So for most of the day, I was generating a netherworld for the UHC that was probably never used, but that's what I did. I spent the whole time generating it, and that's obviously where the joke of James's office came from, because I spent a lot of time in the other room. Because there was 2 rooms. There was a big room where the marathon happened, and then there was a room next door where there was a bunch of computers and stuff, and I spent most of my time in there generating worlds for UHC. But it got to the evening, and people were just kind of chilling. I think most of the guys were playing NHL, or I think Battlefront was being played at one point, and I was literally just sat on my own playing a UHC with Alan. That was it. And I can't remember who made the comment, but someone was like, "Oh, you're doing exactly what you normally do," or something like that, And I thought, that is so true. I'm here, I'm in America, I'm with, all the Katecore guys and that, and I'm playing UHC with Alan. That's it, basically. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think I would change anything necessarily. It was nice to relax, and I didn't want to spend too much time with people, just because, we were going to, in 24 hours from then, we'd probably be all grumpy at each other, because we'd only be halfway through the marathon and all that. So yeah, but then later in the night, I think it was Seth, myself, I think Danster, and Danny. We all played 4-player Bed Wars until 2 a.m. It was so fun, and we only lost once. Oh, it was actually so. I wish I'd recorded it, but recording on my the laptop I had wasn't that easy, and which is the thing. I would have if the laptop I had was better, I would have recorded everything. Because I didn't record anything. For example, the UHC walls. I won the UHC walls. I would have recorded that. I would have recorded the ABBA mining, the final, because that was on my laptop. But anyway, yeah, 4 of us played Bed Wars until 2 a.m. and then had to get up 6 hours later, was it? I don't remember much about the first, the hour before the marathon. I do remember Zenja asking me, "James, you ready to do your face reveal?" I remember that part, and literally my thought was, I can't be bothered. And that's pretty much what I said no, just because I couldn't be bothered. But that's what you get for only 6 hours sleep. Anyway, that leads us into the marathon, and it was fun and all. The marathon was over. I don't really have many other stories I can remember for the marathon, other than I guess I haven't really spoken about, or I might have done on the podcast, the Cape Core podcast. There was a point where I had my eyes closed in the corner, but I genuinely wasn't sleeping. Like, I wanted to sleep, I tried to sleep, I couldn't. I probably chose the wrong spot. I remember I finished doing something. I don't remember what I finished doing, but then right after, Alton he was doing Sky Wars or something, Bed Wars, and I ended up just doing it with him. I have no memory of that whatsoever. I vaguely remember like trying to tell him how to play Bed Wars or whatever. I'm sure he knew, but that's all I vaguely remember. I kind of watched the footage back when I was editing it for the Cape Core Marathons VODs channel, but genuinely I have no recollection of that. So, yep, there you go. That's Jings, is it just me, or is there a lot I can't remember about America? That's quite worrying. Sleeping in the car, right. So, one night Zenj and I decided to sleep in the car. I think it was something we'd both kind of thought about doing at some point. I think we anticipated we'd do it more, but it's just every single night we searched up motels and ended up at them and all that. So, it was just whatever. But this one night we were in Arizona. We were in eastern Arizona. We were in a Walmart car park, and Zenj just said, we're gonna stay here, and I thought, yep, that's fine. And I don't think either of us enjoyed it. Now, my memories of the night I don't have very good memories. Well, there's a surprise. Me not having good memories of something. I remember we went into Walmart to get food, and then I went in again, I think once or twice to use the toilet, but apart from that, and another thing was it shut at midnight, or no, at 1 a.m. it shut. So Zenj was just like, oh yeah, you can go and use the stuff, but you can only do it until 1. You can only do it until 1. I remember waking up a lot, which I guess is obvious because it's kind of hard to get in a deep sleep there. But I just remember cars kept coming in, and people kept, employees or whoever came to stock the store or whatever, kept walking past the car. I'm sitting there thinking, are we supposed to be here? Yeah, I'm sure it was fine, but at the same time, you're still, there's still that awkward. Are we supposed to be here? What are they going to say if they see us? I'm pretty sure a light came on, a car light came on behind us at one point, and it was very, very off-putting. So yeah, sleeping in a car wouldn't recommend. Although that being said, I have done it before, obviously. And to be fair, I did it a lot when I was in when we were on road. I'm sure Zedric can vouch for me that I did fall asleep quite a bit in the passenger seat. I remember pretty much in the morning, Zedric woke up and just sat up and started the car, and that was it. It was night over, without saying anything. It was just night over. Understandable though, because we were getting up, but why? What we were going to get up to do? It wasn't as if we could do anything, so we might as well go and get breakfast. Okay, so we've got 3 more things to talk about, so almost at the end. First thing I want to mention, I never really spoke about this, but a lot of people online, to this day, and even before I'd been to America, a lot of people commented, oh, I like your accent and all that. Or they acknowledged a different accent. That's the point I guess I'm trying to make. When I was in America, I didn't actually get asked about it, ever. No one, which... Was it surprising? I'm not going to pretend it wasn't a bit surprising that no one said, oh, your accent's different, or what's that accent? Where's it from? People would react if I said, oh, I'm from Scotland. I remember the guy, when Zenj and I first arrived in New Mexico on the first night, was it in the morning or was it in the evening? Well, we arrived in the evening, I know that, but I can't remember if this conversation happened in the morning or in the evening, but one of the guys there said, oh, you're from Scotland, and then he went on a speech about how his ancestors were from Scotland and all that. Fair enough, don't have a problem. That only came after I mentioned I was from Scotland. Similarly, when I was at the church in Cortez, Colorado, and it was only after I said, oh yeah, I'm from Scotland, that was when a few people were like, oh, Scotland. And the only person that ever commented on my accent was it was a girl at we stayed in a motel, the one I mentioned in Northern California, the night after the marathon. I can't remember exactly what she said, but I remember she made reference to it. Well, while I was going back to my room. So, you know, it was kind of unexpected as well, you know, because no one had mentioned it before then, and I didn't really expect it to happen at that point. So that was quite surprising. But that was the only time. I'm trying to think why. I'm guessing it's because there might be such a thing is, to me, all American accents sound the same. You know, arguably every North American accent sounds the same. I'm not going to lie. I know I said, I like the accent that was in Cortez, Colorado, but that's because I could, for some bizarre reason, detect a difference. But most American accents sound the same. I'm guessing to Americans, other American accents sound different. And so maybe they sound so diverse that it's not too uncommon to, you know, encounter such a radically different accent and not question it. That's what I'm thinking. But that's that's the story of that. That was something I was looking out for, and something that didn't materialise, which again is a bit surprising, but whatever. It is what it is. I never mentioned this in my last video, but the flush on American toilets is different. Maybe not the sort of topic that is amazing to talk about, but basically, yeah, the flushes are different. I forgot to mention that, and I only remembered it when I was running through my journey from Edinburgh Airport to Atlanta. And one of the things I thought I remembered was my surprise at how the flush worked when I first arrived in Atlanta, and that was the same flush that was used on every other American toilet that I used, where basically you flush the toilet and all the water goes away and then it's replaced. It's different. The water doesn't per se disappear when you're in the UK or just about anywhere else for that matter, but it's like, I'm not sure how, it's like filtered, it's like replaced somehow. It is replaced obviously, but in a different way. In some ways the American system makes more sense, but whatever, it just seemed peculiar to me at the time. Alright, and this brings us to the final story. So I left on the 28th of February, and it was that night that I made the transatlantic flight back to Europe and back to Amsterdam. And what I did was, I hadn't eaten all that much. I think I did eat eventually. Like I did the flight from Texas to Atlanta without eating, I think. And once I arrived in Atlanta, I was like, I'm going to have to eat something. So I ate something small, but it was mainly aeroplane food I was having. And on the way over to Europe, I just felt terrible. I legit felt awful. I've got a few theories, but I'm not going to, they're not theories I necessarily want to say out loud. But the point was, it got to like an hour to go or something, and I genuinely felt like fainting. It was that bad. And I remember going up to one of the flight attendants, and I literally said, I think I'm going to faint. And she just, I could tell she was taken aback, but she just literally said, oh, here, do you want some water? So it was just like, cool. But I mean, admittedly, she's a flight attendant. She's not a medical person or whatever. I mean, maybe they're trained in the art of medical care or whatever, I don't know. But the water did kind of help, and I just basically stood up for a long period. I think it was just being, cramped in the one space, because I hadn't got up for the whole, 8 hours, which isn't amazing. So with an hour to go, I stood up for a bit of time. Yeah, but that was very, I think that is the longest flight I've ever done, the 9 hours from Atlanta to Amsterdam. Well, actually, no, I think it was technically longer going on the way there, because the jet stream, you're going into the jet streams when you do that. But, regardless, it's the longest flight, and that's going to be my overriding memory of a, long haul flight until I do another one. In fact, arguably, does 9 hours even count as a long haul flight? Because I know there's some flights that last 20 hours. Wow, I can't wait until I have to do one of those, if I ever have to do one of those. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to the aviation industry. Anyway, that's the end of my stories. Alright, well, I'm truly the master at stupid projects. If you want a stupid project done, speak to me. We're going to turn the sounds down a wee bit, but let's turn the sounds down a lot. I've managed to get a killing system sorted. As you can hear, there is a piston involved. Now, the problem is there's well, there's a lot of problems. For example, those guys back there are not wanting to come around here. I should say that's a terrible transition. Basically what's happening is my internet's down, so you know, obviously what do you do when your internet's down? You play single player. I decided to try and fix up the killing system here, because obviously we can't use the entity cramming because I turned it off. We've got a few guys. Is that a zombie in full iron over there? Or 3/4 iron? That's pretty cool. Yeah, we've got some guys waiting around here. I think we can solve this by moving this back a bit, maybe. Or just drop them down. We also have a cactus there, and like items I'm sure are breaking, but we are getting a lot as well, so it's not like it's a terrible thing. The most important thing is levels. We're getting a lot of levels. I can only really debug this by, you know, testing it over a long period of time. Like for example, these guys here are clearly, I'm guessing, stuck in the corner. Oh no, there is the baby pigmen. So over time, more baby pigmen will spawn in and end up here, and they're not going to be killed. So we need to either accept that it's an inadequate farm, or figure out a way of getting rid of these guys. Also, there's levels up top, which is a wee bit annoying. I don't think it's a huge deal. I can just like move up, and I think that gave me a lot of levels actually. We can obviously like sort that by doing something like that. Yeah, that should help. But anyway, yeah, this is what we've got so far. I guess I to disable it, I guess what we can do is just head down here and despawn a lot of them. We're all good. They have forgotten. Didn't take them long to forget. Forget the crimes I'd committed. Yeah, as you can see, we do have a lot of levels now. That's like 30 levels in very little time. I had about 7 at the start. I guess I'll make modifications off camera, but well, the main problem is there's a lot piling up at the back here, and obviously baby pigmen. But I think we can. Well, as I said, I'll debug off camera, but the idea is much the same as the standard design for entity cramming, except it requires a piston to kind of push the pigmen into a cactus. And as you can see, it does work. I haven't obviously hooked it up to anything yet. No, I've not hooked up to a storage system, but the idea is that the pigmen run in, they run up the stairs, and then down into the pit there, and it seems to work. Like, none are getting through to me. And if you look here, okay, there's, you know, a few blocks in which I can't quite see, or they can't see me, but everyone else can, and that's really one of the key attributes, one of the key features of the original entity cramming farm. So I think we've done pretty well, even if it's not like efficient, even if there's still a few issues with it, more than a few issues, but we're on to something. I think I'll work on that off camera. I just wanted to finish this up because I'm going out for a walk. Oh wait, the internet's back. Whew. Anyway, yeah, the internet's back apparently, so I'll still be going out for a walk though, and I'll be rendering last episode and this episode. Hope you enjoyed listening to more American stories. Apologies, it was a wee bit boring, but at least we got this farm up and running, and yeah, hopefully it will be polished by the time I come back next time. Until then, thank you for watching. I'll catch you later.